Welcome back, everybody. My name is Nick Fire,
And I'm MarcTheTruth.
and this is another episode of the FireTruth Nerdcast. We're doing this Nerdcast to celebrate and honor the release of Alien Romulus that's coming out this weekend. So we decided, okay, let's do a podcast on Alien 1979, which is a classic film. It's one that has inspired and influenced many series that I personally love. It's also one that, regrettably, I haven't seen before. I don't know how this film has avoided me all this time because I'm a huge sci-fi fan. And I'm somewhat of a horror fan. I'm not the biggest horror fan, but either way, this movie is like my wheelhouse. This is the kind of movie that I've been wanting to watch for a long time. It's just, life happens, other things come out, and you never really get around to it. What is your experience with this film, Mark?
So I watched the original one a long time ago. And then from there, I watched Alien vs. Predator and all the Predator movies. They kind of made them intertwine. I've rewatched them over the years, kind of not in order or anything. But rewatching this one, it makes me hope that the new one can live up to what this one was and kind of follow that same path, because I feel like they kind of lost their way.
From what I'm hearing and reading, Alien Romulus is supposed to be like a spiritual successor to the 1979 film, which is why I wanted to correspond the two and do them both at the same time. So when we do our Romulus Fire review, we can kind of compare and contrast the films and see which one was better or what themes were explored differently, things like that. So let's get into the background, as we like to here on the Nerdcast. The film, it was actually really interesting to research and look into. So basically, in the early 1970s, Dan O'Bannon, the writer of this film, he wrote Dark Star, a space comedy with a beach ball spray painted black with hands that was supposed to be like the alien in the show. But this little joke of what an alien could be is actually what inspired O'Bannon to write what would become the Alien script over many years after. Instead of a comedy, though, obviously, this version turned into a space horror, which was originally a short opening that he wrote titled Memory. Then the project was called Star Beast, which is a horrible name.
Yeah, that's bad.
And then simply it was changed to Alien because it's just, it's simple. It's to the point. Now, the idea was pitched for many years for this horror sci-fi film. They were even pitching it as Jaws in space, which this movie kind of was. Though, at the time, if you know anything about Hollywood and films in the 1970s, a lot of studios wanted nothing to do with sci-fi. And it wasn't until the success of Star Wars that this movie was even considered to be made. Star Wars is literally the reason Alien exists today.
Otherwise, there was just Star Trek and Flash Gordon, and nothing really kind of took that forefront until Star Wars came out and kind of opened the door.
Yeah, and even those were pretty old at that point.
Right.
It kind of sci-fi at that time was kind of looked at as like a dead series or like the kind of genre that nobody wanted anymore. But obviously George Lucas pushed forward, made Star Wars. It was so successful for 20th Century Fox. Like I said, it was the reason Alien even got made. And Alien was even inspired, looks-wise, by the retro future style of Star Wars. So after A New Hope came out and just blew up and was this massive, success, 20th Century Fox was like, okay, we need more sci-fi films now. And so they had Alien sitting on their desk that they weren't doing anything with. And so they greenlit it and chose Ridley Scott to be the director. And that's basically the origins of Alien, which I found fascinating.
Yeah, it's kind of what happened with The Hangover when it came out. Comedies were kind of not a dying thing, but comedies like that. And then once Hangover came out, I feel like we got tons of different variations of that story.
It happens in video games too all the time, where one video game will take off and then, hey, let's just make this, but in this style or that style. Happens all the time. But to know that A New Hope and Alien came out only a few years apart, sci-fi was eating good in the late 70s.
Yeah.
So let's get into the story of Alien 1979. Basically, in the year 2122, the Nostromo, a space-towing vehicle that is returning to Earth with 7 crewmates on board, is basically flying and trying to get in contact with the Antarctica traffic control so they can land and deliver their tow. Now, I kind of like just in the very beginning, like that first scene with the ship. That you can tell that was very much inspired by Star Wars.
Oh yeah.
And my immediate thoughts, like, I didn't know really what the movie was going to look like. I've seen pictures, but I've never actually watched clips, I don't think. Or if I did, it was a long time ago. And my immediate thoughts right off the bat was, wow, these visuals hold up.
Well, I think they use practical effects as well, but like their practical effects they use held up just like kind of like Star Wars did. Granted, now they've kind of, if you look at it with what we have now technology wise, like they're kind of behind, but could still put out a movie using that effect and it would still work.
I would even argue the sets and stuff were even better than Star Wars at times.
Yeah, I mean, they were more simplistic, which I think definitely helps. Because when you kind of get oversaturated, like Star Wars is, sometimes it kind of, you can tell that it's like, all right, you can tell that that's a backdrop.
Well, and the difference between like Star Wars and Alien is that Star Wars is like this fantasy soap opera kind of story where Alien almost felt real. Like when I was watching it, I was impressed how the characters felt so real. Like they seemed like real people. Even at times it kind of felt like I was watching a documentary in the very beginning with how like natural they were coming off. And then, yeah, obviously, as you said, the practical effects. I mean, that's the charm of those 70s and 80s movies. And it's why none of them ever really aged that bad outside of their CGI, of course.
Yeah.
But I loved it. I loved the opening of this movie. And like I was talking about, I loved the crew. The crew themselves, they felt so organic and like real people. It almost felt like a movie that was very much ahead of its time because it was very like NASA-ish. And it almost feels like this could actually be what things are like in the 2100s.
Exactly. Yeah. Like this could be something that unfolds, not necessarily like live on TV like they did with the moon landing, but it's something that could unfold like as we get to able to travel farther in space.
Yeah, eventually when we become a spacefaring society, at least in the beginning of it, I could definitely see things being a lot like this, where people are out working in space doing these kind of jobs, just regular people. This is just a job to them. And that's kind of how the movie starts with the crew of 7. They come out of their cryo sleep, which if you don't know what that is, that's basically like being frozen and just sleeping until they arrive at their destination. Well, when they awake, they think they're close to Earth. They think they're almost there for their delivery. And I kind of like just the lightheartedness of the opening of this movie.
Like it's not scary right off the bat where like you're introduced with a jump scare right away. Like there's actually build up to the story.
It's like this is just an average day in these people's lives. I don't know. It just felt so organic and, like I said, natural.
Yeah, laced up my boots, went to work. This is where I'm at now.
And the acting was incredible. And something that I really loved about the beginning of this film, this is expert writing. You can tell who all of the characters are, like what their job is, without it being told to the audience. Like their role was not established through dialogue. It was just kind of shown, and then kind of just through casual conversation, like you're on the ship and you know these people. It's kind of revealed to you that way.
Yeah, it's almost like you're kind of following them along as a member on the ship.
So I said it almost kind of had somewhat of like this documentary style to it in the beginning. Now, the crew, like I was saying, they try to contact the Antarctica Traffic Control, only to realize they've been taken drastically off course by Mother, the ship's AI. It's kind of cool to see AI being used in 1979. Not really a concept films were using back then.
There wasn't the fear of AI like there is now.
No, because back then it was just fantasy.
Yeah.
A great quote that I heard once is science fiction becomes science fact. And I think that almost holds up true every time.
Yeah.
So Mother, basically, the ship's AI, has intercepted a transmission of unknown origins. And due to galactic policy, the Nostromo is veered towards another planet to investigate this signal. And one of my favorite scenes was just how Parker, that man was so worried about his money. My man's like, am I getting paid for this?
I feel like every movie that takes this kind of story needs a character like that. That's just like, this is my job. I don't give a shit. I want my money.
Parker was awesome because he was like the only voice of reason in the whole movie. He just seemed like a regular dude. Like, why the hell are we doing this? I'm trying to get home. I'm trying to get paid. Am I making more money for this unknown signal? If I ain't doing it.
Which I'd probably, if I was in that situation, be him. Like, am I getting paid to do this extra little thing that I'm doing? Like, no, it's just your job.
But like I said, due to like galactic policy, they have to go by law and investigate this. So the crew departs on the mission. They land on the mysterious planet, and of course, the ship malfunctions and it leaves them stranded for hours. Now, out of the characters, there's 7 of them, like I said. And those characters are Dallas, the captain, Kane, the executive officer, Lambert, the navigator, Parker and Brett, the engineers, Ash, the science officer, and Ripley, Sigourney Weaver, our main character, the warrant officer. How did you feel about Ripley's character in this film?
I thought it was a good character. I mean, I don't know if it was the one I would have chose to kind of be like the focal point, or at least not have her, maybe not that job title to be the focal point.
I kind of liked it because it was kind of just this. She was like the 3rd ranking officer. Like, she was never supposed to be in charge of anything, but kind of like most companies, the person in the middle is actually the smartest one in the room.
Yeah.
So I kind of liked her character. That one thing I appreciate about this film too, and another thing that made it ahead of its time, was that all of the characters, like, they didn't focus on their genders at all. They were just people. Like, they could have been any gender. It could have been anybody. Any actor could have played any of those characters, and I just liked how they all blended together so well. So when they land on this planet, their ship goes haywire, and Dallas, Lambert, and Kane decide to walk to the unknown transmission since it's only 2,000 meters away from them. And they find a strange and foreign crashed ship after exploring, and then find a fossilized alien life form inside and notice its chest has exploded. This was actually one of maybe my favorite scene in the movie, because it was really cool how instead of just the alien, like, I thought the alien was just going to hop on their ship or something, or like follow them back to the ship. I didn't expect that they were going to find another alien life form that had been killed by the alien, in the movie.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of thought it was same thing. Like, it was just going to be another ship from Earth that got stuck there that no one remembered or forgot about. But then the fact that it was a different being, it's one of those things that they could have touched on more.
I kind of like that they didn't, though, because it made it a little more creepy. Like, this other race of people has already been terrorized by something.
Which should have been your warning sign. Like, all right, let's just go back on the ship, fix ship, get out.
You'd think so. You'd think finding that exploded chest, which was a great detail, you'd think after finding that, I would have been like, all right, guys, let's go. This clearly is not a transmission asking for help. And that's basically the next scene is Ripley starts analyzing Mother's readings of what's going on, and it discovers the transmission is a warning, not like, come help me, not distress. It was literally warning them, do not come this way. Obviously, it's too late, though. And of course, doing some crazy white people shit. Kane gets lowered, and he finds eggs. So naturally, we're going to go towards those eggs.
I would have said, nope. As soon as we fix this ship, if we have any bombs or anything that we can drop, we're dropping and we're gone.
You would have found me running back to Parker being like, I ain't getting paid enough for this. I'm helping you fix this bitch and we're out. But of course, Kane goes towards this egg, sees it pulsating. It's always a great sign to walk towards. It opens and something jumps out, attaching itself to Kane's head. Now, what is the alien, like the little spider thing? Do you know what that's called?
I don't know. I always call them their like generic name, face suckers.
So this little like spider alien basically breaks through the helmet, attaches itself to Kane's head. Dallas and Lambert bring him back to the ship, and Ripley refuses to open the door, saying, like, are you fucking crazy? We're not letting you in. That's protocol, baby. We're not letting you in because you could get all of us killed. But Ash, our science officer, denies her wishes and opens the door anyways. This leads to Dallas and Ash trying to figure out how to take the creature off Kane's face. And Ash doesn't seem willing to kill the creature. And this was like the first scene where I really thought, okay, something's up with this dude. He seemed all too willing to have this creature on the ship. And I kind of assumed he was just going to be like the mad scientist type of thing.
That wants to look at it and inspect it.
Yeah, like it's something new. It's something exciting. Even if it's going to risk our lives, it's like a scientific breakthrough. I didn't expect what was going to happen later. And we'll get into that later. But I just wanted to say out there that what actually happens with this character was very unexpected for me. What did you think about that?
Same thing. When I first originally watched the movie, I didn't think about it. I was just like, okay, he wants it on the ship, but doesn't really want to follow protocol. Like the loose cannon of the group, like, oh, whatever, like, he'll be fine. We can bring it on the ship. It'll be alive, whatever, dead. Don't matter.
Or I thought he was going to end up being like this Dr. Frankenstein type, like doing it for science's sake. I didn't expect what was going to happen later. And like I said, we'll get into that later. But this was my first inkling that something was up with this dude, and I didn't like it. So they end up making this incision in the little spider alien, and its blood is acid. And the acid goes through the decks of the ship. It doesn't go fully through. But that scene, like, that was one of the scariest parts of the movie because I thought, oh, they're fucked.
Yeah, like it's gonna melt the whole ship.
And just like, you know, melt the floors that keep the air in from space. Like I thought they were gonna be screwed like that, but that doesn't end up happening. It stops melting right before that happens. But I love how just the whole beginning of this film and actually most of it was very slow and like methodical. Like it definitely took its time with the tension. And that was something that's my kind of horror. I'm not the kind of person that enjoys horror where it's like guys just going around killing people. I like feeling on the edge of my seat and kind of like, in suspense, you know?
Like, I like the type of horror, like, don't get me wrong, I like my fair share of like slasher type horror films, but I like films like this where like it's something that could actually happen.
Yeah, this whole film was pretty like this legit is something that could potentially happen one day. If we ever travel to space and find another life form, this is probably exactly how it would go.
Yeah, or we could find another life form and we could be that life form that like they go to kill, and on their planet or where they're from, our blood is acid or our blood is toxic to them.
I mean, there's so many possibilities in the universe, but yeah, I love horror films that keep you on the edge of your seat and or games or anything, just horror that leaves you in suspense and doesn't just throw everything at you right from the start. And this movie did a masterful job of that.
Yeah, and it's not predictable either.
Like the actual, it wasn't predictable. And like the actual alien, you don't even see until like an hour into the film, hour plus. Like it really kept you in like suspense. Like, when is this going to happen? So after they figure out the acid problem, Ripley confronts Ash about letting the creature on the ship and disobeying orders. This scene right here made me actually love Ripley because I'm like, okay, I completely agree with her here. What the hell? Like, why'd this guy do this? And I just like that Ripley she was kind of the first one to figure out something was up with this guy. Now, much later, Ash calls Dallas and Ripley to come check on Kane. And this is when they discover that the creature has vanished. After searching the room, the creature falls on Ripley, but it's dead. Ash wants to take it back to Earth for examination. Ripley is like, I want to throw this bitch out the airlock. And Dallas basically is like, well, he's the scientist. We should just leave it to him. Now, a question I wanted to ask you. Do you think Dallas knew the true purpose of the mission? Or do you think he was in the dark like everybody else at the time?
I think he knew some. Like, I think he knew part of it, but not the full extent of the mission.
Yeah, I don't think he knew the extent. You're right, but it definitely he seemed like very willing to be like, no, we need to take this back.
Yeah, which I'm with Ripley. I would have thrown it out the ship. I'm like, nope.
I mean, at that point, it was too late.
Well, yeah.
So at this point, Parker and Brett fix up the ship and they return to the Nostromo. Kane actually awakens and everything seems hopeful. Like, oh, okay, the alien's dead. Kane's up. We're all going to go back into cryo sleep. Hey, before that, let's go have another dinner. They go to eat. Everything's cool. And then another one of my favorite scenes happens where Kane starts freaking out, looking like he's having a seizure. They're trying to hold him down, like, what the hell is going on? And the baby alien erupts from his chest. How did you like this scene, Mark?
Well, I thought it was great. Like, I mean, I don't think anyone knows if an alien existed like that, like how it would really work, like what would happen. But I thought it was great, like portrayal of like a alien that uses you as the host, and it's like, all right, well, it got into you through its mouth. It's not going to come out your mouth. It's got to come out some other way. It's not a jump scare that you would see in a typical horror movie, but it is a jump scare.
Definitely, because you don't understand what's going on until the alien erupts.
Yeah, and it's the first time it gets revealed that, like, oh, there's more than just the thing going on your face. It does lay an egg.
It basically like impregnates you, dies, and then you become the host of the new alien. That in general is just, that has been used in so many video games. Now I know where it comes from. So after this, the crew basically is freaking out. They have to find this thing. And Ash creates this tracking device that will make noise when they're in the vicinity of the baby alien so they can capture it and throw it out the airlock. So they split into two teams. Ripley is with Parker and Brett, and Ripley goes off and she tries to track this thing, and she starts hearing it beep in the lower levels. She gets towards this locker, and this was actually the biggest jump scare of the movie for me, the cat. I did not expect that damn cat to be in there. Jonesy. So after Jonesy runs away, Brett goes to find the cat. He's like, Jonesy, and always, why would you go after the cat, bro? I'm sorry. I don't even like cats, first of all.
Neither do I. And the cat survived on the ship before that thing was there. Let it be.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but I ain't risking my life for no damn cat. So this guy's an idiot. And honestly, he deserved to be the first victim of the alien, the full-grown alien, because he ends up finding the skin of the baby. And I'm like, oh shit, that thing
molts fast.
Thing develops quick. So he finds the skin. He starts looking for the cat. After I would have found the skin, I would have ran. But no, these crazy white people shit again. And he goes to find Jones, and that's when the alien, the classic black alien, shows up. So how does it work? Is like the baby alien inside of the big one too? Because it has like two mouths, or is that just like its tongue?
I think that's just its like tongue. Like it's just an added element of like the scare, because its tongue comes out and it also has a mouth.
Right. And that scene was awesome. I'm like, good, that guy deserves it. Fuck that cat. Also, I really loved like the heartbeat in some of the scenes where they just had someone's heartbeat. That added a lot of tension. The spacey music was kind of like ominous and eerie too, once in a while. And the utilization of like loud sounds in this film, I thought was really awesome.
Yeah, like sounds are a big part of scary movies without having to see anything scary.
Yeah. It was great. Like this is definitely like, in my opinion, this is definitely like a masterpiece type of film. I can see why so many things were inspired by it. So at this point, Ripley and Parker, they basically, this happened off screen, but they found Brett dead, and they saw the alien using the air ducts to move around the ship. So everybody's like, oh shit, what do we do now? Ash comes up with the plan to use fire, and Dallas, he wants to use a flamethrower going through the air ducts to force the alien outside of the airlock. And that doesn't really work out too well, does it, Mark?
Nope.
Dude basically gets eaten in the air ducts. And Dallas, our captain, is now gone. So both of our captains are gone. And at this point, Ripley is self-promoted to the captain. She decides, okay, fuck this. I'm going to go to the mother and ask it for help. And this is where the most interesting scene in the entire movie happens. Whereas she's researching what's going on here on Mother's database, she finds Order 937 and discovers that their mission is not what they thought it was. It was always to retrieve the life form, and that their lives were considered expendable. What did you think about this?
I thought it was a nice twist because it's one of those things where it's like, whether you guys live or not, like this ship's coming home with the life form on it.
You know, and again, that's something that would probably happen in real life and has happened many times before.
Like our government sent people places where, whether they come home or not doesn't really matter as long as the mission that they're doing is completed. And that's one of those cases. Like they could have all came back dead, not even on the ship, as long as that ship came back with the alien.
Yeah, their lives were expendable. So Ripley freaks out after seeing this. This is where Ash arrives and reveals his true intentions. He is not a mad scientist like I thought he was. He is actually a robot. And he was programmed by the company or the government. I'm not really sure who was behind. I think it was the company. He was programmed to get this life form back to Earth. And he basically tries to shut Ripley away from everyone else so she can't go warn them. And he attacks her. He beats the hell out of her and has this like immense strength. But Parker and Lambert end up finding him and like tear his head off. And I've seen a lot of things through all the video games I've played or movies, shows I've seen. I've seen a lot of robots or AI. This was the most unique one I've ever seen, though, because inside of him was kind of like, it looked like the insides of a person. And he had this like white water, I guess you could say, for blood. It was really cool. I've never seen anything like that before. Usually it's just wires and stuff.
Yeah, usually it's just wires, a little bit of shock, and then they're dead. It was kind of, it came much later, but General Grievous-esque, where, he has somewhat of organs, but he's kind of just a cyborg.
Yeah, it was really cool. I mean, I don't know if it was supposed to be that he was a person at some point or if it was just a robot AI that was made to seem like a real person. So they had to make it like a real person. But it was cool either way. I've never seen anything like that before.
Yeah, I don't think it's talked about, but it could have been one of those things where like they sent them on that mission knowing none of the humans were going to live. But maybe they did that where if the Facehugger attacked him, it would still have a way to survive and get home.
Either way, he was there to make sure that thing got back to Earth.
Yeah.
So after they tear his head off, he basically like powers down and dies. But Lambert rewires the robot. And this is where Ripley asks, how do we kill this thing? You should know. If you're programmed to bring it back, you should know how to kill it. And Ash basically says what none of them wanted to hear. This thing is a perfect organism. You can't kill it. I like that idea that this thing, it has no morals. It's like, it is really just like an animal. It has no morals or anything like that. It is literally just doing this to survive, and it's just what it does.
Yeah, it's like how humans were developed. Like we were developed in a way where it's get food, like hunt, eat, survive. That's all it knows, and that's all it does.
That's like, it does. It's not killing people because it's bad. It's just doing it because that's just what it does.
Yeah, that's all it knows.
So after getting that information, they're basically like, well, fuck. And my man Parker torches that son of a bitch with his flamethrower. He melts that robot. That scene was great. Parker's the man. And at this point, Ripley, she gets distracted by that damn fucking cat again. This cat killed more people than the alien did.
Because cats are evil.
Yeah, they are. Ripley, like, she basically just runs off Jonesy, while our boy Parker and our girl Lambert, they also get eaten by this alien. And Ripley's just off looking for a cat.
It was kind of just their way to get her away from the death scene.
Yeah, it was. But seriously, why is everybody so damn worried about this cat? He's doing fine. He's doing better than you.
Exactly. He's surviving just fine. It would have been the least of my worries at that point.
So basically, at this point, Ripley realizes, shit, I'm the sole survivor. She sees Parker and Lambert's corpses and is like, well, there goes that. I need to get the fuck off this ship. And she basically sets the ship up. She like pulls the emergency and sets it up to detonate in 10 minutes. This scene, that was awesome. I didn't expect that. So when she did that, I was like, oh, now the movie's really getting good. Because now she's got 10 minutes to get off this thing. And this is basically the scene where the action starts picking up. And I love the visuals of like all the smoke and everything hitting her. Like the visuals in this part of the movie were better than most that we get today.
Yeah. And it's all practical.
You can't beat practical, man. And I was kind of having this conversation with one of my coworkers. Shout out to Ron. He listens to this show.
What's up, Ron?
So I was talking to him about this earlier, about how, in a Marvel movie or something, CGI, it's less impressive because it's animated. You know that like Iron Man isn't really flying around
Right.
and doing these things. So you don't really think about it, but it's when you see a practical set though, man, it really just pops out so much more.
And it makes it seem more real. Like even in scenes now where like there is smoke and fire, it's fake. It's CGI. But back then it was real fire and it was real smoke.
It's what makes those old movies still so like charming to this day, like I said before. Like you'd think they would get old over time, but they really don't. They become more impressive over time.
Yeah, that they were able to think and do that in a controlled environment and make it work on camera.
I also like the scene where she's like up against the wall because she's like gathering her equipment. She's getting the cat in the cage. Like she's getting ready to leave. And there's like the blinking light. And she's in that flashing light. And when she turns the corner, she sees the alien. That scene was heavily inspired, or has heavily inspired many video games. I also just want to know, I got to ask you this, because this is the scene where the alien doesn't see her at the time because it's more interested in the cat. Now, what is going on here with this cat? This cat has survived the entire time. The alien is leaving it alone. Like it's not doing anything to it. Even in this scene, it could have clearly ate it and it didn't. So I can't figure out, does the alien just respect the cat? Because cats are pretty intelligent too. Does it recognize it as another intelligent life form? Or is this thing afraid of cats?
Either it's afraid of cats or it recognizes it as like, oh, you're more intelligent than what I'm killing. I'm not going to kill you yet. Like you basically do what I do, because cats go and hunt and live if they're wild. So maybe it views it as that, like, oh, you're like me, either no, we're completely fucking different.
Yeah, I don't know. I thought it was interesting. I was like, is this thing afraid of the freaking cat? Because it is not going after this cat. It's just letting it go. And it still does.
I kind of want to look up whether or not the director, like, just loved cats.
Have you've seen the other movies?
Mm-hmm.
Is there anything else with cats in those?
Kinda. Not to the extent of this one, though, where, like, it shows up a bunch.
I don't know. I don't know what Ridley Scott's like intention was, but I liked it. I thought it was cool. Either way it goes, it's an interesting idea that this thing is just either afraid of cats or it just respects the cat and just it's maybe because the cat isn't really a threat to it, like you said. So 10 minutes passes, but it resets and still gives 5 more minutes before it self-destructs. So Ripley has to survive for a few more minutes, and she gets the cat and takes off in a smaller ship. She gets away from the Nostromo, and the ship self-destructs in the background, and it makes her think that she killed this alien. Obviously, I saw there was still 20 minutes left in the movie, so that couldn't have been the case.
No.
But what did you? I know it's old. Okay, I'm not gonna knock the film for this, but that CGI explosion was hilarious.
Yes, they can be bad, but that's one of those things where, like, at that time you're turning that corner of CGI being a thing, so you're gonna want to use it. But there are many movies where that happens, where it's just kind of like, oh, that was clearly terrible.
But I mean, that's just what the tech was, though. I'll give a lot of credit for George Lucas, because I think the explosions hold up in Star Wars.
Yeah.
Whatever he did it right.
He did a lot of things for practical effects, right? That some movies still use now. Not so much with explosions, but like a lot of scenes where there's a lot of characters in it. Half of those characters were painted on a picture on glass and then filmed in a certain way where they looked real.
Well, and I know like the ships were toys.
Yeah, they're little models.
And I think this movie did the same thing,
Yeah.
because the ship, the Nostromos, looked very similar to like the Imperial. You could kind of tell it was like a model, but it still looks good.
Yeah.
So yeah, that explosion was hilarious. Like I said, I'm not going to hold that against the film. It's 1979. I know CGI isn't going to, and you can't really blow up a ship in space. So, until that day comes, I'm not going to hold it against anybody. So basically Ripley is like, okay, we're good. And this is another scene with the freaking cat. She has the cat. Now, I thought the cat was going to be an alien too. That didn't end up happening.
No.
Like I thought the cat was going to be like impregnated and then it was going to erupt into a new alien on her ship. That didn't happen, like I said, but I noticed the alien, it's on her ship. It didn't die, but it didn't reveal itself until the cat was put away. That's all I'm saying.
I think it's scared of cats.
So anybody who goes into space needs to bring a cat with them at all times.
Just purely off of this fictional movie, just in case, bring a cat.
Science fiction becomes science fact.
Yeah.
So use the cat, NASA or Elon or whoever's going to go to space next. At this point, Ripley sees the alien, freaks out. She hides in the closet because she was about to go back to Cairo sleep. And, now she can't because an alien's on her ship. But it looks like it's kind of trapped or something. So she gets dressed up in like the spacesuit and she's watching the alien from the window of like the closet. And then she sits down and her idea is she's going to open the airlock when the alien gets itself free and throw it out there. And she's going to like strap herself into a chair. And she starts singing a very old song, You Are My Lucky Star. And actually, I don't know if you've seen the trailer for Romulus, but they used that song in the trailer. So I actually knew the song before going in. I just thought it was a creepy song for the trailer. Now I see it's actually a big part of the franchise. So that was a great scene. So she straps herself in the chair, opens the airlock. The alien goes flying out. I think she had like a gun or something. I can't remember that she shoots the alien with to get it out, to like force it out because it's holding on. Then she stops. She closes the airlock, runs over to the engines of the ship. The alien's trying to crawl through the engines and she lights that bitch up. That scene was awesome, even though there was like, you could kind of tell at that point the alien was like a little like puppet or something.
Yeah. But can't knock the film for the time frame. Like, you got to do what you got to do.
No, you really can't. Though I will say, in my opinion, even though I liked most of the alien scenes, I will say that even for the time frame, I did think it was a little behind things like Jaws and Star Wars.
So with Jaws and the effects that they used, everyone puts them on a pedestal where like they were so far ahead of the things they did. Don't get me wrong, they thought outside the box with their practical effects, but I feel like there was movies before them that did stuff that changed the whole landscape for practical effects, and some of them are still used today. Star Wars is one of those, but I also feel like this movie, with the budget they had, did things that completely changed how people use practical effects.
I could see your point on that. I still think, in my opinion, Jaws and Star Wars was just a tad bit more impressive than the Alien.
Yeah, we also had two of the best directors.
Yeah, and I'm not sure what their budgets were compared to the Alien film, but either way, I mean, it was still good for the time.
Yeah.
It just, I thought we'd maybe see more of it, and I think maybe the reason why was because their animatronic or whatever it was wasn't as good as like Jaws's or even just like some of the Star Wars costumes for Aliens. But I mean, it was still good. I'm just saying that even for 79, I think it just could have been a little bit better.
Yeah. I mean, I don't think it was that bad for what they did, though.
No, but there was a couple times where you could tell it was like a guy in a suit or like, you know, a puppet or something. But then most of the scenes were good. This is only like 2 scenes that I'm talking about. And like I said, I'm not going to give it that much flack because it's 1979.
Yeah.
Yeah, so at this point, Ripley, like I said, she forces it out the airlock, starts the engine, fries it, sends it into space. And this is basically where the movie ends. She gives her final log and goes into cryo sleep, and that's the end of the film. And I thought that was a pretty good end of the film. I was reading, though, that Ridley Scott originally wanted the alien to bite Ripley's head off, and that be the end of the film. But 20th Century Fox was like, no, let's let this go out on some hope.
Yeah, that one person survived.
And I think that was better.
Yeah.
And clearly that was better because it allowed Ripley to come back in the other films.
Right.
From what I was seeing. And that's kind of something I want to talk about is I love this movie. I thought it was great. It's probably not one of my favorite movies ever. I regret not seeing it sooner. I really wish I would have seen it before. I can't believe I've waited this long to see such a masterful film. And It's actually has me excited to watch Aliens next because usually we all know horror movies, they fall off a cliff after the first one.
Yeah, they start to get weird.
But from what I heard, Aliens is actually just as good or better than this film. Would you say that?
Yeah. I mean, it's a good continuation. That, you know, the aspect that like horror movies get weird is like Friday the 13th with Jason. Like he goes to New York, he goes to space, he goes to hell. Like they ran out of
space.
Yeah, he went to space.
Oh Jesus!
Like
Christ.
they ran out of ideas.
Or like Michael Myers getting killed every movie and coming back somehow.
And surviving. They ran out of ideas, and I think with Aliens, they didn't really run out of ideas. It's just one of those things like they kind of lost their recipe for their story.
It's like a lot of things where once it really takes off, they end up turning it into more of like an action film than what it originally was. A lot of things do that. I mean, you could say that about Fast and Furious. It used to be about cars, now it's about big action scenes. And that's kind of why I haven't liked a lot of horror movies, because I just don't like the aspect of it losing the horror for like the big action and explosions and just weird shit like him going to space. What the fuck is that?
I don't like when horror movies lose their horror to make more money.
Yeah, and that's what I kind of just thought happened with Alien, just because it's a typical trend with horror movies. But I was pleasantly surprised to find out that apparently Aliens is really good too.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know about the other ones.
No, it's once they got to like Alien versus Predator and all that, like they kind of...
Yeah, those movies got to be wacky.
Yeah, that's when it started to become like just action, and even for the time, like selling toys and getting big name actors.
Predator is another movie I haven't seen, so we'll have to do that on the Nerdcast one day.
What are you doing?
I don't know. I live under a rock. That's what everybody tells me. But hey, this podcast will help me see things and introduce me to things. So I'm excited for that. Something that I wanted to talk about was, I brought up video games a lot. And it's because while watching this film, I could see how many of my favorite video games just took clear inspiration from this film. Bethesda specifically a lot, like Mother, the terminal, it being green, and like the way it's set up looks exactly like the terminals from the Fallout games. Starfield, which was the brand new Bethesda game that just came out. I mean, looking at the outfits and the characters, how they kind of had this like retro futuristic look. It was all at the same time like old style clothes, but like in futuristic settings or like NASA inspired things. If you put Starfield up next to Alien, they look like the same thing. Then, of course, a classic game that I've talked about, Halo, one of my favorite games of all time. There's Alien in it called The Flood, and it basically does the exact same thing that the Alien does in this. It uses a human or a like biological host, impregnates it, and turns it into one of its own aliens. And then the final thing just being Dead Space. Dead Space is basically like Alien, the video game.
Yeah. I haven't played Dead Space, but I know, like, I've seen clips of like the cutscenes and gameplay of it. And yeah, I can agree with that it's basically just they took the Alien movie and made it a game.
Basically, like Dead Space, I just played the remake last year, which was awesome, by the way. And basically in Dead Space, it's the exact same kind of story, except you go to like a derelict ship that's been infested with these aliens, the Necromorphs, I think they're called. And you find out that it was because the humans were on a planet excavating these artifacts, and the artifacts possessed them and basically turned them all into these creatures. It's a similar story. It's just people fucking with things they're not supposed to be fucking with.
Yeah, which even happens now.
Oh, yeah. And it's going to continue to happen until we humans meet our untimely demise.
Yeah, until we fuck with the wrong thing.
Yeah. So, yeah, I saw a lot of great video game inspiration, and I love seeing that. I love seeing where some of my favorite things kind of, the ideas for them or certain things from them were birthed from. Do you have any thoughts, like any final thoughts that you have that you want to discuss about Alien?
The only thing I want to say is, like, I think I said at the beginning of the podcast, but I want to reiterate it, that from what I've seen and I've heard, it looks like the new movie is going to follow that same formula as the first movie, which I think is great. I mean, I'm going to guess it's going to be successful enough to do kind of a retelling of all of the movies and kind of just reboot the whole series. So I hope they kind of just keep the formula the same. and don't go the route that they went towards the 90s, where it just kind of became selling and merchandise.
Yeah, unfortunately, that's what a lot of things become once they hit it big. It's one of those things where like the creativity comes before the money.
Yeah, that's okay if they go that route where, you know, they want to make money and sell toys. Just, I kind of hope they just keep that same formula where it's sci-fi horror. It doesn't need to be horror movie like jump scare, jump scare, jump scare. Just keep that ominous, like mysterious flow to it.
Alien, to me, even though I don't know like a ton about it, it does kind of seem like a series that's fallen off a bit. So I think it's one that kind of needs to return to form to get people interested again. And Romulus seems to be, you know, it seems to have gauged everybody's interest in the series again. So much so that it even got me to come watch the first one.
Yeah. Hopefully drew you to want to watch the rest of them and then kind of start Predator and go to Alien versus Predator.
Yeah, I mean, we'll cover every single one of those at some point down the line in this Nerdcast or in Fire reviews. But overall, I think the film holds up. It has that great charm to it that those old movies do. They never really get old except for the CGI and, you know, some of the animatronics at the time. But outside of that, phenomenal film. I think it's a masterpiece. And I can't wait to watch Aliens and some of the other series. And I'm glad that I finally got into this.
I'm glad you finally watched it too.
And now I can't wait to see Predator 2 at some point down the line. But that's basically it. That's all we have to say about Alien. Get prepared for our Alien Romulus Fire review that'll be coming out shortly after this. This also has inspired me to want to play Alien Isolation, which is a horror video game that came out a few years ago that people said was really good. Of course, I never got around to it because I hadn't seen the movie yet. But now I'm going to, because now I'm really fascinated with the series, and I can't wait to see how they did it in game form. I'll probably play the game in October and use it as like, I like to play a scary game in October just for the Halloween vibes. So I'll probably play it then and then cover it on the channel.
There you go.
So if you want to see more of that between our Alien Romulus review, our Alien Isolation, and our Nerdcast next week, where we're going to stay and stick with the sci-fi 70s theme, because we are going to do Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope. You can like, comment, and subscribe. It would help us a lot. Follow us at FireTruthCast on Spotify, X, Instagram, TikTok. And get ready for more coverage of Alien and sci-fi, all sorts of things, as we go along with our show. Other than that, we'll see you guys on the next one.